my job today to officially elect the new chairman of Horsham District Council Southern Planning meeting. So we'll start. Have we got any nominations? Councillor Clark.
I'd like to nominate Councillor Tim Lloyd.
And do we have a second of it? Councillor Lambert. Any other nominations? Is everybody agreeable to Councillor Lloyd being chairman for the next year?
Great.
Then he is duly elected. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Right, we go on to, or before we start actually, I'd just like to mention a couple of things. This is to the members of the public. This is a Planning Committee South meeting today, which the members of the public are present, and it's not a public meeting. We're not expecting a fire drill today, but if you do hear the alarm, please make your way to the exits, which are here and here, and make your way outside to the meeting point, which is by the bandstand. May also remind members to switch off their phones, turn them to silent, or finally to turn off your microphones when you finish speaking. Thank you very much. It would be helpful if you remember to turn them on. Right, so. Before we start the official part of the meeting, would the officers like to make themselves known, please?
Good afternoon. My name is Giles Holbrook. I'm Senior Planning Officer. Thank you.
Emma Parks, the Head of Development and Building Control. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Michelle Hock, Legal Services. Thank you.
And Liz Fennick, Democratic Services.
Thank you very much. Item 2, do we have any apologies, please?
We've received apologies from Councillor Jack Saheed.
Okay, thank you very much. Right, item 3 is the appointment of Vice Chairman. Are there any nominations? Oops. Thank you very much. Is there a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Potts. So, are there any other nominations? In that case, are we all agreed that Councillor Paul Clark will be Vice Chair? Yep, agreed. Thank you very much. Okay, item 4, to approve the time of the meetings of the committee for the municipal year. Now, traditionally, we've held these at 2:30 on a Tuesday. And I would just like to throw this open to the members to decide whether they want to continue to meet at that particular time or not. So, Councillor Brown, would you like to kick it off?
Thank you, Chair. As many of you will know, I've been lobbying to try and move the time of this meeting to a more reasonable 5:30 to bring it in line with Planning North. And after taking advice from the monitoring officer, I understand that that is more in keeping with other local authorities and would bring this meeting in line with the rest of Horsham District Council's committees. The reasoning for my request is for those of us that have daytime work commitments. It's much easier to attend at 5:30 than it is in the afternoon. Previously, my own personal situation, when I was working for a corporate, I would have to take paid annual leave to attend this meeting, which wasn't a problem for a year and a half or so, but my current circumstances are such that I have to pay somebody to cover my work while I'm here during the day. Wasn't a problem during lockdown, obviously, because we had hybrid meetings. Fabulous way of having meetings, in my opinion, but I know it doesn't suit everybody. But I do know, after talking to other members, that there are many other members that struggle for this timing for various reasons. And I don't want to get into the legalities of it, but apparently there are some Equalities Act issues that could be a problem should we continue on with the current timing. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much. Anybody else would like to make a comment? Sorry, James.
Sorry, I would just echo what Councillor Brown said. I'm also of working age. I also have to take holiday to come here. It's not just, I think, about the councillor's personal circumstances. It's also the individuals who are attending here in the back as well. To have to take a holiday or the afternoon off work to come and represent yourself at a planning meeting shouldn't be the way. We should do it in the evening. I don't think it's a huge hassle for us, but it will greatly improve the lives of at least Chris and I, if not others, and people who are elected next year as well, but also those wanting to attend and have their voice heard.
Thank you very much. Councillor Potts.
Yeah, just to go on record and say I agree with everything that's been said.
Thank you very much. Does any councillor wish to put in an opposite view? Councillor Blackwell.
My view is that we should remain as we are. It works well for the majority of members here. And the idea of having a meeting at 5:30 that could go on with some of these meetings to 9 o'clock at night, if you live in the rural areas, going back on a wet winter's night is not very appreciable. And of course, other members like myself have other commitments which are more easily apply during the day rather than coming yet to another evening. Thank you.
Is there any other? Councillor Van der Kloot.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to endorse what Councillor Blackwell has said. I think the difference between this committee and the Planning Committee North is that we all have to travel that are on this committee a far longer distance than the members of the Committee on Planning North, who mainly live in the Horsham town area. I live probably the furthest away, which is about 19 miles. And it is, these do tend to be very long meetings, and it will be a very late night getting back in bad weather in the winter. The other point that Councillor Brown made was that he wanted to bring it in line with other timings of other committees. I do chair a committee, which is the Standards Committee, which does meet at 10 o'clock. So there are other committees that meet during the day. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else? Councillor Lambert.
Thank you, Chair. I concur with Councillor Blackwell and Councillor Van der Kloot.
Councillor Knoll.
I would also support my colleague on my right there, and I would say
Okay. Anybody else wish to? Okay, in that case, we'll go to straight vote. Do you want to come up with a proposal, Councillor Brown?
Thank you, Chair. The proposal would be to move the meeting in line with the Planning North timings of the Planning North Committee. So that would be 5:30 start in the evening.
Still keeping it to Tuesday.
On a Tuesday.
Do I have a second to that?
I'll second that.
Councillor Wright, thank you very much. So all those in favour of moving the meeting to 5:30 on a Tuesday, can you please raise your hands?
1, 2, 3, 4.
All those against?
1, 2, 3, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Any abstentions? 3. Thank you very much. In that case, that proposal is defeated, and we'll continue with our meetings at 2:30 on a Tuesday. Item 5, to approve the minutes of the meeting held on the 24th of May 2022. Can I take it that these minutes agreed? Agreed. Thank you very much. Item 6, declarations of members' interests. I'd like to, before I ask anybody else, I declare an interest item 9, as I know the first speaker, Mr. Barnes, through dealings with Steyning Parish Council. And I am a fellow parish councillor with Councillor Alexander, who's here today, but I understand he's speaking as an individual, not as a councillor. Does anybody else have any interests? Councillor Platt.
I also sit on a committee with Russell Barnes.
Thank you. Councillor Croker.
Yes, I also sit on several committees with Russell Barnes, but I don't believe it's a prejudicial interest. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any? Councillor Knoll.
I actually sit on a committee with Russell Barnes as well, but I don't believe it prejudiced my decision in this case.
Thank you very much. Anybody else? No, thank you very much. Move on to item 7, announcements. I don't have any announcements. Anybody else does? Item 8 is the appeals. You've all had the list of appeals. These are for noting, unless any member has a comment they wish to make on any appeal. No? In that case, we'll move on to the first application, DC 212394. So could the first speaker, Mr. Barnes, please make his way up to the table? Are you are going first, aren't you? Yes, okay. Could make your way up to the table. Thank you very much. Right, DC 212394 is 141 to 143 Shooting Field, Stenning. This application is for the demolition of 2 number residential dwellings and all ancillary structures. The construction of 14 2-bedroom apartments with secure and covered cycle storage, car parking provision and refuse enclosure. That's now on to the presentation, please. Who is it?
These, yeah, they're all flash.
Who?
They were flashing for a while now. They've gone off.
Right, how are we calling in technical? Don't ask me to do it. In that case, we'll have a short recess while we try and work out what's happened. Is she doing it? What is the fallback? Okay. Yeah.
That one.
Okay.
Wait 5 minutes. See what we get to.
All right.
And just advised, please, get some of the IT thing down.
Okay.
Just text please to get IT down.
Just going to turn it off and on again.
Okay.
That always works, doesn't it?
That's a good start. It's your presentation. Yes, I know. It's called Sod's Laws. It's still flickering. Doesn't that mean that there's a communication problem? No, it's got. They're all on.
Changed it to HDMI rather than picture. That seems
Oh.
to work.
Well done.
Okay.
Little round of applause, I think.
Okay.
Right. Please, everybody, fingers crossed that this carries on. Yes. Okay, let's move on then. I'll just repeat that. It's DC 212394 141143 Shooting Field Stenning. Applications for demolition of 2 number residential dwellings and all ancillary structures, the construction of 14 2-bedroom apartments with secure and covered cycle storage, car parking provision and a refuse enclosure. So can we get on with the presentation, please?
Thank you very much, Chair. And apologies for the slight delay there. We seem to have resolved our technical problems for now. This application is DC 212394. It relates to numbers 141 and 143 Shooting Field in Stenning. The application site is located at the northern extent of Shooting Field against the junction with Toomey Road, which runs to the adjacent east of the application site, with the application site centrally located on the slide in front of you, outlined in red. The application site is located within the defined settlement boundary for Stenning, where the principal development is established in accordance with the adopted spatial strategy of the Horsham District Planning Framework. You can see that there are no specific site constraints to the development. There is a flood zone just to the edge, just to the edge of the bypass to the northeast, but unlikely to be influenced by the development, with a number of existing flatted developments to the south, the site opposite on Shooting Field, and indeed within the Dingerman's Court development to the adjacent north. These are some images of the existing site, that is numbers 141 and 143. Both are of a relatively standard mid to late 20th century design, featuring shallow pitched roofs, facing red brick construction. Number 143 has been very slightly extended to the side and rear, but ostensibly both dwellings are identical in their existing composition, featuring off-street parking and with relatively generous setbacks relative to the carriageway, owing for the size of the highway verge in this location, which does provide for a sense of spaciousness. The site surrounds are quite varied in character. Building typologies do range between 1 and 3 stories in height. These are images taken from Shooting Field specifically. In the top left-hand side, you can make out the site in the distance. So there are distant views along Shooting Field, but they do reduce as you move further southwards away from the site. This is the adjacent terrace, which is a terrace of single-storey dwellings that are almost arranged back to front, such that they are accessed to the rear with their private views out to the south, and obviously with no intervening boundary treatments or fencing to afford privacy in that location. The site is to the rear, where you would expect the development to be visible above these dwellings. And here again at the bottom, you can see the site on the left-hand side, with the 3-storey existing flatted development opposite on Shooting Field. It's worth noting that the Stenning character appraisal does note that this part of Stenning becomes increasingly urban as you move away from the town centre, and that does become particularly evident once you cross onto Toomey Road, which the site joins the junction with. You can note a number of existing 3-storey flatted developments, in addition to relatively comprehensive 2-storey terraced flatted development as well opposite the site to the northeast. In addition, there is 2-storey terrace development immediately opposite the site on Toomey Field. In general, therefore, the site surrounds are quite urban in character, though the size of the highway verge in particular does provide for a sense of spaciousness, which is considered to be a relatively significant component of local character. I think members should also note the prevalence of on-street parking in and around the vicinity of the site, also in addition on the previous set of slides. Though some dwellings do benefit from off-street parking, there is generally quite a lot of on-street parking in the locality, which is somewhat characteristic of this area. The proposals are for 14 2-bedroom market dwellings, which would be provided within a single block of flats. The block of flats is laid out broadly in an L-shaped footprint, though that is staggered. The purpose of the staggering to provide privacy within balcony spaces, with balconies provided at 1st and 2nd floor levels, and in addition to provide a greater degree of setback between Shooting Field and Toomey Road respectively, and a slightly greater degree of step back than is currently the case. This site would retain its existing access with number 141, which is here at the bottom of the site, which would be retained to provide a single disabled parking space, with a new access introduced off onto Toomey Road, accessing a number of 9 parking spaces which would serve the development by way of Undercroft here. That would be a new access, I should say. With the indicative plan suggesting some additional landscaping to the western and northern site boundaries, and indeed to the site frontage as well. The proposed building is 3 stories in height. It would feature a flat roof, which would be slightly staggered between 2 forms. The proposal would feature a relatively favourable void to solid ratio with a good number of fenestrations, that's windows, featured throughout, which are arranged in a relatively regular vertical emphasis, particularly with accounting for the size of these windows. The material palette would be a contrast between red facing brick between the junction, or closest to the junction between the 2 roads, though with a white brick featured to the secondary elements, which is slightly set down. These are the rear views. So sorry, I should have said this is the main frontage along Toomey Road, with the secondary frontage here on Shooting Field, and then to the rear. This would be facing, well, you would see this perspective along Shooting Field. You'll notice the reduction in fenestrations. I imagine that's partly to provide privacy to the adjacent terrace, with the closest windows serving bathroom spaces. So you would expect these to be obscure glazed, and indeed this being a stairwell, so a communal space. Members, however, should note that there are still relatively large fenestrations featured, particularly at 1st and 2nd floor levels, and in addition with balcony spaces to be provided to the rear as well. So consideration does need to be given to effects on the privacy of nearby occupiers. These are some visuals which are taken from the design and access statement. So I think these should be treated as indicative at this stage. Though you can see, of course, the intention here is ultimately to provide a building of contemporary character, utilising brickwork detailing, utilising materials to provide articulation within the building, to provide visual interest. In addition to utilize or to incorporate some additional soft landscaping within the site frontage and adjacent to the highway verge. In addition, a further visual showing the corner of the development site. You can note the increase in height relative to the single-storey dwelling, and indeed, of course, of the development more generally. Officers do consider the design to be acceptable, especially with regards to the provisions or recommendations of the stunning character appraisal, which do note that this area possesses a more urban character, with the development deemed to be of an acceptable design, particularly once consideration is given to things like conditions, which can secure an appropriate materials, appropriate detailing within the building, and in addition, the use of reveals as well, which are the depth of windows, such as to provide our further articulation within the building as well. And I think just one quick point to make on this, it is noted that the building does possess a flat roof, with most buildings in the vicinity generally being a shallow pitched roof design. It should be noted that design is there to accommodate 111 solar panels, and in addition to a sedum living roof which would be incorporated. The standards of efficiency which are targeted by the building are very high, and I think that is something we should be assigning positive weight to, and therefore it is necessary to incorporate a flat roof in order to accommodate that standard of sustainability, noting of course that a flat roof would reduce the surface area available to provide solar paneling. The recommendation of officers, however, is to refuse the proposed development on the basis of its likely effects upon habitat sites. This is an extract from the MPPF at the top and underneath the habitat regulations. The proposal has provided a water neutrality strategy, which has been subject of detailed consideration. And on the basis of the submitted strategy, it is considered that at present that a position of water neutrality hasn't been demonstrated with sufficient confidence. Therefore, in line with the authority's duties under paragraph 182 of the MPPF, in addition to paragraph or regulation 63 of the habitat regulations, we cannot currently conclude that the proposal would not adverse or avoid adverse effects upon the integrity of designated sites in the Arun Valley by way of water use, and therefore the recommendation is to refuse planning permission on that ground alone. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed. Mr. Barnes, you have 2 minutes.
Do I need to turn your mic on, or is it on already, is it?
It's on as it happens, yeah.
When would you like me to start?
Now?
Good afternoon, Chairman, members of the committee, and thank you for the opportunity to hear our comments this afternoon. For the last year, we've worked very closely with the planning department on this project through both the pre-application and the formal planning application. It's been a very positive relationship, and we have nothing but compliments for Giles and Matthew for their handling of the project, and indeed their thorough and very balanced report that we've just heard. However, we do, of course, have an objection to the final recommendation and the outcome of the water neutrality review, which is the only suggested reason for refusal. For the benefit of members, a revised statement has since been completed, which demonstrated water neutrality, and this was issued to officers last week. An additional buffer of comfort has also been secured with an MOU for the Steyning Town Community Football Club to install rainwater harvesting systems and new toilets in the bar and both changing rooms, as well as a range of other upgrades. We are aware that Natural England's position statement has posed a significant hurdle for Horsham to overcome, and we laid no criticisms at all at the officers. In fact, we have a great deal of sympathy for them. However, for the sake of openness and transparency, we felt it only right that members were aware that this application is able to achieve water neutrality if time is allowed for the review of the latest report. For ease, members will note that there is no outstanding objections from any of the statutory consultees, which includes the drainage teams at Horsham and West Sussex, along with Highways, Fire and Rescue, Southern Water and Steyning Parish Council. In addition, the principle of development, character, design and appearance are all acceptable, and there are no objections to amenity, housing mix, parking, highway safety, drainage, flood risk, ecology, biodiversity and climate change. If councillors are mindful to support this application, subject to the latest water neutrality statement being assessed, but feel there are challenges with applying a suitable condition this afternoon, we simply ask if they will instead defer the application to allow officers to have sufficient time to review the revised report, which will confirm the application is water neutral. On behalf of our client, I'd like to say thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much. Dead on time.
Practice, you see.
Yeah. Right, thank you very much. Are there any comments you wish to make? Thank you very much. Yeah, just sort of do that and then speak.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I do have a few comments in response. I am aware that a revised water neutrality strategy has been prepared. That was submitted to me late last week, although I haven't had the opportunity to review that. And I think in light of the agenda being published, in light of the current recommendation being made to members, I think it is right that this discussion is based on the information upon which the recommendation was made. Members do have the ability to seek to defer to hear this application at a further meeting, subject perhaps debate in relation to other matters. Though, of course, I think it is worth being aware that any further consideration of those matters may not necessarily yield a positive outcome. I haven't had the opportunity to look at the strategy. I don't know whether it is a viable and feasible strategy at this point in time. We would have to undertake a habitat regulations assessment in line with our legal duties. So there would be time factors to consider in addition. So at this time, it is an option, but I can't yet give the confidence that a solution has yet been found.
Thank you very much. Mr. Alexander, could you take the table, please? Thank you. You have 2 minutes.
Good afternoon, Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Simon Alexander. I am actually one of the parish councillors for the area, but today I speak to you as a resident. I live directly opposite the site, and actually, in fact, from my 3rd floor flat, overlook the site from my kitchen window. I wrote in favour of supporting this development in Steyning, and you may note that's in the consultation stage. Now, I've lived in Steyning for several years, and I'm aware of the challenging market we have down there. There is a significant shortfall of houses for both first-time buyers and those looking to downsize. This application seeks to deliver that much needed housing that we don't have in Steyning. The new apartments benefit from a high-quality finish and technology with significant focuses on sustainability and biodiversity, as well as ecological gains. As far as I'm aware, there is only actually one other dwelling in Steyning that achieves 100% efficiency environmental impact in Steyning at the moment and a rating of A. This application seeks to deliver 14 more. The application also includes EV charging, and I'm one of the many EV car drivers out there, where there is also a significant area for bicycles and bicycle charging, whilst it's also literally within meters of the main bus stop down there and connect Stenning to Shoreham, Brighton, and obviously Shoreham train station. I'm aware that there were objections by some members, but there was a lot of support for this development from other local residents like myself, and I'm convinced that there is great benefit from this development. I understand from the officer's report and from what we've just heard that there is concerns over the water neutrality. However, I would suggest that there is this new statement that's come out that the committee consider this. And if that condition can't be reached or cannot be considered today, then I would suggest, or may I suggest, an alternative approach would be to defer rather than refuse, as it will only have to come back in time to come. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. No. Okay, thank you very much. In that case, we'll move to the local members, of which I am one. We've had a very good in-depth presentation by the officer, and I can't really add much to that. And in principle, I have no objection to the overall design and the scope of this application, particularly as it's providing accommodation for first-time buyers. And I feel the overall design will have a positive effect on the area, and the proposed 111 roof solar panels will deliver energy efficient homes. However, I do have an issue with the provision of parking. As you all know, this has been a little bit one of my big bars. Whilst I accept that the officers believe that the transport statement is robust and that the applicants has had surveys done in the surrounding streets, using a parking methodology promoted by Lambeth London Borough Council, a methodology I understand that WSCC endorsed. But as you can see in 6.52, the officers highlight the fact that the under provision of on-site vehicular spaces relative to expected demand does result in conflict with HDPF policy 41. I suggest that we should be enforcing our own policies that were voted in by this council. And if I'm correct, a number of spaces in line with WSCC guidance, notwithstanding our well-documented concerns over this guidance, is that there should be 11.34 spaces for the apartments and 2.82 spaces for visitors, a total of 14.16 spaces, 4 more than is provided. Even though this is not a significant number, Shooting Field is already congested with parked cars, despite what the survey suggested. And as I've said, we should be adhering to the principles of our own policies and insisting that the basic guidance is followed. However, this application is recommended for refusal on the grounds of water neutrality and the insufficient information provided to demonstrate that with sufficient degree of certainty, the proposed development would not contribute to an existing adverse effect upon the integrity of the internationally designated Arun Valley Special Area of Conservation, contrary to policy 31 of the HDPF 2015, paragraphs 179 and 180 of the MPPF 2021, and other reasons as laid out on page 31. However, I received yesterday evening a copy of an email sent out by the architects last Thursday, 16th of June, which I believe some members like me may not have received. I should have received mine 16th, but I didn't get it until yesterday. In this email, the architects attached a revised water neutrality report, which the officers received after the recommendations on this application was made. This new report is 89 pages, and understandably, the officers have not been able to supply this committee with their findings on the report prior to this committee meeting, as it came in after the agenda was prepared. In view of this, I personally don't believe that this committee is in a position to debate this application with any degree of confidence, that it has all the relevant facts to reach a decision. Therefore, I suggest to the committee that this application is deferred until such time as the officers have assessed the new water neutrality report and are in a position to report back their conclusions to the committee. In addition, I would like to see whether the applicants can increase the parking spaces to at least 14 to ease potential parking congestion in the area in line with HDPF policy 41. Now I'll leave members to decide on the course of action on this application, and we'll now go to Councillor Platt as the other local member. Councillor Platt.
Thank you, Chair.
I would support your recommendation that we defer this application to allow time for officers to discuss the new information that the applicant has provided on water neutrality. I have seen it, I have looked through it, but I have no idea whether it would actually pass their scrutiny. But I think that really it would save a lot of time and a lot of effort if they could go through that now rather than for us to turn the application down on the basis of water neutrality. The applicant had to resubmit with this information and to go through the whole process again. That doesn't seem to make a lot of sense to me. So I would like to move that we defer this application for further consideration by the officers with the new information supplied on water neutrality, and for it to come back to the committee if that's appropriate.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Right, I'll open it up. Does anybody else want to make any comments? Councillor Chan.
Thank you, Chairman. I think this development will be hugely welcome by Steny because they have real problems because there's so few sites to do anything meaningful in Steny. But what's important to me slightly is that this gives us some units for first-time buyers, which is important. But also there's an opportunity to do something a bit more meaningful for people who are downsizing. Now, the difference between people who are starting and those who are downsizing is one lot have got a lot of big furniture and others have got a lot of small furniture or no furniture at all. And the big problem for downsizers and the reason people aren't downsizing is they can't find anything suitable to move their traditional family furniture into. And also there's usually the doors are not big enough and the plugs are in the wrong place. And I just wonder when we've got this golden opportunity to provide some new eco-friendly, efficient, warm, snug accommodation in Steny, which is so close to the town and also for other facilities, that we ought to, the ground floors should be designed for older residents to move into downsize. So you really should have slightly bigger rooms because you've got bigger furniture to put in and you have furniture. Otherwise, you're not going to move out of your big house and downsize. And if you're doing that, it'd be great if they had slightly wider doors so that they're prepared for people in wheelchairs and easy access. And the plugs could be rearranged. Doing that when you're building is not a great cost, and it certainly would make them very more attractive. And there's a great many people I know in my villages who are desperate to find something to downsize to, but they can't. So they're having to stay in big houses because there's nowhere for them to go. So that's both generations, each end of the spectrum, who this could really benefit. And for villages, I think apartments are a great idea for addressing that real problem. So I would ask that the developer and the planning officers, if it's coming back, to look at this, and hopefully we should look at any development in the district, that this opportunity for downsizing is available as well as first-time buyers. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Any other councillors? Councillor van der Kloot.
Thank you, Chairman. One thing that concerned me about this development is that it doesn't comply with our policy on provision of affordable housing. Under policy 16, where there's a development of 5 to 14 dwellings, the council will require 20% of the dwellings to be affordable, or where on-site provision is not achievable, a financial contribution equivalent to the cost to the developer of providing the units on site. So my calculation is there should be probably virtually 3 dwellings, 2.8 I think, so call it 3 dwellings that are affordable. I have had a look at the financial viability assessment submitted on behalf of the applicant, and rather oddly it says that the scheme itself is not financially viable. It will make a loss of 1.188 million. That was my reading of it. And it went on to say it's therefore not economically viable. to provide affordable housing. Well, I do follow that logic, yes, certainly not. But that's not any reason not to comply with the policy, or either by providing the dwellings or making a contribution. And I wondered if the officer had any comment on that. Is there any grounds on which the development can be allowed without complying with that policy? Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Councillor. I think to explain, the context is when a development advances that they cannot provide a policy level compliant level of affordable housing on site or an equivalent contribution in lieu, which is what HDF policy 16 would otherwise, and our adopted affordable housing and planning obligations supplementary planning document would expect. Is that is subject of an independent viability assessment to set out in open book terms the reasons as to why that cannot be provided in this instance. We have received an assessment which has been subject to independent review by a financial advisor separate from the council, who has agreed with the conclusions of the viability assessment submitted by the applicants, that the development could not viably provide a policy level compliant affordable housing, or indeed an equivalent contribution in lieu of on-site provision. There are contexts within the supplementary planning document which do allow for flexibility to provide market housing without a level of affordable housing. This would be its standard expectation in policy, where that would compromise development viability, and that is equally reflected in the provisions of the MPPF as well. So members do have to, of course, consider the balance between not providing any affordable housing and providing a level of market housing for which there is in addition a need within the district. That is generally accepted to be a benefit of development, irrespective of whether affordable housing is delivered or not. I think in this instance, the conclusions in respect of the actual figures in terms of the loss predicted, I noted myself, that is because there is a certain adopted methodology as set out within the planning practice guidance, within which the viability assessment has been provided in accordance with. And I imagine that is a reflection of the use of the existing use value plus methodology, which would assume that in order for the development to be released or to become viable to be released for development, it must provide an acceptable level of return to the developer. And that standard figure in the context of an existing or two existing residential premises will be quite significant, which is why that existing value or the value predicted within the viability assessment is as it is. But I think for the avoidance of doubt, that has been rigorously tested, and we do concur with the conclusions of the viability assessment which has been provided. Thank you.
Thank you. If I could just come back on that. If the standard methodology for assessing the viability, it leads to the extraordinary and rather absurd situation that there's going to be a minus 1 million, an over 1 million loss on the development. You're always going to then come to the situation where it won't be viable to provide affordable housing, and therefore you're going to have to apply this, as you say, this balance of deciding between whether it's better to have some housing or no housing. And of course, it's always better to have presumably some housing. So there's no point in having the policy here in the first place if it's always going to lead to that strange conclusion.
May I comment? So I accept those fears, but I don't know necessarily whether that is the case. So I think perhaps to explain, the development is predicted to make a loss against a standard return, which is set out within the planning practice guidance methodology, i.e. there is a percentage return which will be embodied within the overall viability figure, below which the development would contribute. So in this instance, the developer is expected to receive a lesser amount of profit than would ordinarily be the case on perhaps a development which isn't so constrained, or where the existing use value wouldn't be modelled to be so high. So what that suggests in this instance is the developer is actually taking a lesser degree of profit in order to deliver the proposed development. That might not be the case in another instance where a developer might expect, for example, a 20% return. So because that assessment doesn't take account of the provision of affordable housing, it would follow that as soon as you incorporate those figures, that would compromise the overall feasibility of delivering any form of housing on the site. So I think in that instance, it is highly unlikely that a policy compliant level of affordable housing could come forward in this instance.
Thank you. It seems to me that something is wrong with the methodology.
Do any other members have anything? Sorry.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'd like to second what Councillor van der Kloot said. I also observed the 1 million plus loss forecast on this development. And when you see something like that, you do question the methodology completely. It just doesn't make sense to me, I'm afraid, as a layman. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other members?
Chair, were you putting forward a proposal to defer?
I'm going to in a second until somebody else wants to come up with something. Okay. Right. Yes, please.
I just wanted to say that I understand the debate about affordable housing, contributions, etc. However, the need for this kind of housing, particularly in that area, I think should carry great weight in this case. However, it's all a moot point because until there's a water neutrality statement that's acceptable and meets the requirement, then it's dead in the water anyway, forgive the pun.
Absolutely right. Okay, then in that case, nobody else has got anything else. Well, the recommendation is to refuse planning permission as detailed on page 31, but I'm going to propose that the committee, as the committee and officers have only received the applicant's revised water neutrality statement report in the last few days, and we certainly only received mine the night before. The proposal is to defer the determination of the application till such time as the officers are able to report back to the committee with their recommendations in the light of the revised water neutrality statement. And also I would like to add this point about the parking spaces. I'd just like, in addition, the committee requests the applicants to relook at their parking facilities to achieve 14 parking spaces in line with the West Sussex County Council guidelines and policy 41 of the HDPF. Now, I'm not necessarily going to push that one, but it was just for them to have a relook at it and see if they could come back with an alternative parking strategy. Yes, seek to achieve, I've been told, is a very appropriate. Thank heavens you're here. Okay, facilities to seek to achieve 14 spaces.
They could seek to achieve
Okay. Is that
Under consideration of providing accessible units.
Okay. It's going to be a long proposal. So
Further consideration.
seek further consideration.
Providing accessible units at ground floor level.
To find to
provide accessible units at ground floor level.
accessible to disabled. Accessible ground floor apartments. Okay. Right, I'm going to read this out if I can read my writing. Sorry.
If I could just
Yes, of course.
clarify one point with you. On the parking, were you seeking to achieve 14 spaces
Yes.
or an additional 14
No,
spaces?
to
Because
achieve 14.
paragraph 6.46 says that 10 are being provided.
Yeah.
But in accordance with the County Council guidelines, there should be 24 spaces. So that's an additional 14. that is needed to be compliant.
Sorry, Giles, can you help with that?
Thank you very much. I did prepare a brief slide on the basis of parking alone. The parking figures which are reflected in my report are somewhat based upon the evidence which was prepared in conjunction with the submitted transport statement. West Sussex County Council do have a guidance which sets out a certain number of spaces for locations within the district and within West Sussex. Though those locations are generalised, they take account of all rural context effectively across West Sussex. They aren't necessarily specific to Steyning, and I think it is worth noting that the way that Steyning is categorised in exactly the same way that most rural parts of the district are, where reasonably perhaps you would expect some differences between car ownership and car demand and need for parking, as you would in this location. So what has happened is the submitted transport statement contains a site-specific, or more specifically a ward-specific assessment of local parking demand, which is reflected within. Sorry, it's actually not showing on the screen at the moment, but they've come up with an alternative figure for based on car ownership rates within the locality, based on expected parking demand, which is a methodology which has been accepted by the county council within their consultation response specific to this application. So yes, the amount of calculated parking demand differs from that set out within the standard guidance for that reason. Members are correct that yes, the total number of visitor spaces plus demand for residents would probably be in the region of around 14 spaces total. Yeah. Does that help?
Yes, that's the way it was worked out. So shall I just read that again then? As the proposal is that as the committee and officers have only received the applicant's revised water neutrality report in the last few days, the proposal is to defer the determination of the application until such time as the officers are able to report back to the committee with their recommendations in the light of the revised water neutrality statement. In addition, the committee requests the applicants to relook at their parking facilities to seek to achieve 14 parking spaces in line with the WSCC guidelines and policy 41 of the HDPF, and to seek further consideration to provide further accessible ground floor apartments. That's my proposal. Can I have a seconder for that? Thank you. Councillor Lambert. So all those in favour of that proposal, let's please see your hands.
Seventeen.
Is that?
So it's 17, which is unanimous.
Thank you very much indeed. In that case, that proposal is carried. Okay, before we move on to item 10 on the agenda, application DC 220135. Could Mr. Flanagan please make his way up to the table? Thank you. The DC 220135, Fieldview, Clay Hill, Bramber, Steyning. This application is for the erection of a replacement boundary wall to the front of the property, providing access to the highway as a variation from previous permission, DC 171245. Please have the presentation.
Thank you, Chair. This application is DC 220135, which relates to Fieldview, Clay Hill in Bramber. This was a dwelling which was approved in 2017 and has been constructed in a slightly different way to the, as approved on the submitted plans or the approved plans at that point in time. So the proposal is to regulise an alternative access arrangement together with a boundary wall which has been constructed along the frontage with Clay Hill. This slide shows you the current access arrangements, i.e. that to propose to be regularised, although members should note there are some slight changes sought to this access arrangement. Specifically, a brick pier is proposed to be moved very slightly to provide a very slightly wider access, and in addition, the boundary wall is proposed to be lowered to a height of 60 centimetres, particularly to the west of the main access or existing highway access. This is an image of the site as it currently exists. Members should note, of course, the height of the pier, particularly to the west of the point of access. together with the height of the retaining wall, which bounds the property along its side. Now, you'll see in the next view the constraint that this feature provides to visibility, particularly westwards on Clays Hill. These are two images taken within more distant views, and again you can see one within the westerly approach, one within an easterly approach, the westerly approach being the northern, the easterly approach being the, not northern, sorry, the top image, the bottom image showing the easterly approach. So you can see here, of course, this is the site with the height of the piers providing some impediment to visibility where you would ordinarily expect a vehicle window to be. To the south, the visibility isn't restricted to quite the same extent as that within the westerly approach. Though members should also note the presence of a sign and a telegraph pole, which do provide some impediments to visibility. The view of the local highways authority, well, they have reviewed the proposals, including the proposed changes to the access arrangement, i.e., retaining the access where it is, although increased very slightly in width, and with the reduced height. The view of the local highways authority is that the proposal would not adversely affect highway safety or severely impact upon highway operation. And in addition, that although the visibility displays are very slightly reduced as relative to the original scheme, i.e. that approved in 2017, the decrease in height of the boundary wall and the increased vertical visibility, which would be consequently provided, would offset to any slightly reduced in the length of the visibility display. The LHA further comments that the features in the highway and the pavement, so effectively the telegraph pole and the sign here, would not unacceptably impede visibility, such as to warrant a refusal of planning permission on the basis of highway impact. In terms of character, I think it's fair to say this would be a relatively minor change. I couldn't imagine that there would be any harm to the locality in reducing the height of the boundary treatment at all. And this is a further image taken from the edge of the pavement, just approaching the site. So again, you can just see it up here. And I just wanted to point out these two existing accesses, which are slightly further down the road to the east. And it's just worth noting, I think, on that basis, that the existing access arrangement is already superior to those which already exist in the vicinity. You would expect that these hedges would impede visibility to a greater extent exiting from those points of access, as probably with this wall and fence here. And in addition, there are, of course, entrance gates, which would impede the operation of the highway whilst in operation. The recommendation of officers, therefore, is to approve planning permission with the proposal not considered contrary to paragraph 111 of the National Planning Policy Framework, which would require that planning permission be refused on highways grounds only if there's unacceptable impact on highway safety or if the residual cumulative impacts on the road network would be severe. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Flanagan, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to speak on this matter. As already alluded to, the matter relates to the erection of a wall subject to previous planning approval in 2017. I'd like to note that was by the previous landowner, not the current incumbent. Unfortunately, the wall constructed was constructed in such a way that exceeded the parameters of the previous planning permission. Today, the new owner seeks to redress this issue and alleviate concerns raised by the parish council. The wall is indicated in the most recent drawings is to be reduced in overall height to around 600 millimeters. This applies to the duration of the wall and accepts some minor deviations to contend with the landscape. Secondly, concerns which have been expressed relating to road safety, as already alluded to, appear to have been addressed. Please may I assure all parties that the revised scheme has been reviewed by West Sussex Highways, who offer no objection, and further reassurance can be found from the Safer Streets Manual, in which the visibility displays for a 30-mile-an-hour speed limit area are far exceeded. That pretty much sums up where we are. So thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. No? Okay, in that case, we'll go to the Quaker.
Thank you, Chair.
Members, I should say.
Firstly, I probably ought to apologise to members. This is going to get slightly technical, but I'll try and keep it brief. we're talking about visibility here, and if you look back at the history of this application, well, there have been several applications prior to this. To my mind, the visibility display has never been clearly demonstrated. And I have a concern that highways are operating on a basis of some flawed data that's being provided. As I said, it gets technical. The last diagram showing visibility displays claimed something like 50 odd meters to the westbound, to the west. But that was based on the visibility to the eastbound traffic stream, whereas it should be to the westbound curb point. So there's some basic technical flaws here that I'm not happy with. I think it's fair to say the parish council has had concerns all along about visibility and access there. To pick up on a couple of specific points, the wall the planning officer referred to, the boundary wall, is the hard point here. And I don't think that reducing the current brick frontage wall will actually make much difference, given that the normal calculation point for an X height is over the current wall height anyway. Secondly, yes, I accept there are other access points on that road, but I don't think that makes it acceptable to put in another bad access point. However, I have to realise that West Sussex has actually approved this, and therefore it's not incumbent for us to refuse it, but I would like my concerns noted, as I don't think I can do any more to improve matters here. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Quaker. Councillor Knoll.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I wanted this brought to committee because I too was very concerned about the access and exit arrangements there, more specifically exit. That is a very fast road, although it's subject to a speed restriction. It is one of the main, it's one or two main entrances into Stenning, and cars and buses, I may say, come down that road with some speed. I am concerned that the display would not be sufficient, and West Sussex County Council has made various recommendations, and they say that, strictly speaking, they would require slightly larger display. Having said that, and they say the LHA do not believe this location meets either of the criterion. So my problem is that obviously this is a West Sussex County Council problem rather than Horsham District Council. We're the planning authority and they are the LHA. So that puts me in a quandary. It is, strictly speaking, a minimal problem between the recommendation and the actuality of the proposed amendments. And as my colleague, Councillor Croker, has already said, I think that all we wanted to do was to bring this to the attention of the committee when assessing this. As I said, there have been no accidents, no recorded accidents, but it's a fast road, and should an accident occur in the near future, then District Council will probably be looked at rather critically. So I just wanted to make that point now before making a decision on it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Cricket. Do any other members have any comments? Councillor Sakes.
Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Flanagan drew attention to the point that there was great concern in alleviating the concerns of the parish council. And looking at 3.4, I'm not sure, maybe you think I'm splitting hairs, but no comments received from Bramber Parish Council. I mean, what does that actually mean? Does that mean they've not actually, their planning committee hasn't got around to meeting yet? Does it mean that they've looked at it and have no comments to make? do we take that as an implied approval of where we are? Or, I mean, how is one, I mean, do we know what views Bramber Parish Council have on the amendments and the reduced wall height?
As far as I'm aware, not. Going into that.
No, obviously they provided initial comments, but they haven't provided comments to the subsequent amendment, so we do not know what their comments are. So I don't think we can imply they're acceptable or not, that they haven't provided comments.
So they might find them unacceptable.
They've been given an opportunity to comment and they haven't. I think we have to make an assessment on the basis of the information before us. Obviously, whether the parish object or not doesn't make our decision for us. I appreciate it's useful to know and it can inform a decision, but it doesn't prevent us from making a decision. Thank you.
Another member, Councillor Croker.
Thank you, Chair. As Vice Chairman of Bramber Parish Council, perhaps I can comment on that. This was considered by the council. The majority of members decided that there was no additional comment they wished to make. Although, to be fair, several members did actually vote to make some objections, but they were outvoted at that meeting, if that helps.
Thank you very much. Anybody else? No, in that case, we'll move to the recommendation, which is to approve planning permission subject to appropriate conditions as detailed on pages 40 and 41. Can I have all those in favour of that motion, please? All those against? And all those abstaining?
Okay, just to advise you, so we had 14 approved, 2 against and 1 abstention.
In that case, the planning permission has been approved. Okay, before we move on to item 11, can Mr. Hudson please go to the table? This is on TPO 1551. I believe Mr. Hudson's reversed with Mr. Carey and Ms. Kim. Thank you. This is TPO 1551, land at South Mill House, Mill Road, West Choltington. This application is to consider whether tree preservation order 1551 should be confirmed. May I please have the presentation?
Thank you very much, Chair. As stated, this is TPO 1551, relates to land rear of South Mill House, Mill Road in West Choltington. It seeks to confirm the tree preservation order served on 10 total trees in land to the rear of South Mill House. I've circled the relevant land subject of the TPO in black here, and these are the trees contained within that. Subject of the TPO proposed to be confirmed. The members should note that this site, this paddock, has a rural backland feel, and in addition is relatively visible from public rights of way which exists to the east of the site, notably 2421 and 2424. This is the recreation ground opposite the site on Mill Road, with this being the Parish Council village hall here. Over the further public right of way which runs away to the west of the site. This is the plan of the trees, the subject of the TPO. That's 10 total trees. They are all oaks, I should say. That is 6 individual trees, 5 of which are located on the eastern site boundary, and a single grouping of 4 oaks centrally and southerly within the site as contained within grouping G1. This is a view from the east of the site on the public right of way, and with 5 of the trees subject of the TPO shown or annotated there. They do relatively prominently feature. They are a positive landscape feature. They have been assessed by our arboriculturalists to be of good health and to provide good amenity value, as equally has tree T1, which is on the western site boundary and can be observed between the neighbouring dwellings of Millview and Springwood, as it can be seen here, although that was of course taken during the summer. And this is group G1 here, southerly within the site, and can be seen from the village hall car park here and in the foreground, above the dwellings which front Mill Road. and can T6 in the background there. As stated, it is considered that these trees do positively contribute to local character. They do positively contribute to the rural landscape, their setting of their location, and the proposal is for the order to be confirmed.
Thank you very much. Mr. Hudson, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Given that I have a very short time to address this committee, I recognise that I shall not be able to make reference to the Secretary of State's guidance, nor much else that should be considered upon this proposal, but I shall do my best to crack on. I am Laurie Hudson, and together with my wife Carol, we own South Mill House. We have owned it for over 20 years, and the trees affected by this proposal are located within the curtilage of our large garden. We do not own a field or land. Owing to time, I can only deal with one part of this proposal directly to demonstrate this. Within one part of this order is a group of 4 trees located at the southern edge of our garden. Part of the reasoning for the listing of these trees is that they are required to provide screening. The land to the south of this boundary is agricultural, with nothing but agricultural land behind it, with no direct link southwards to residential properties. It is stated that these trees are central in the officer's submission. They are not even near to being central, although being so would make the case stronger. I brought an amended map for where the trees are. They're marked incorrectly on the thing you have in front of you. But upon this agricultural land and behind the 4 trees is another significant belt of mature trees located on this neighbouring land. These trees are located 10 to 15 metres south and are approximately 60 feet high, providing a very effective screen for the land to the south in any event. The only domestic dwellings are to the west and at such an angle that these trees screen nothing. Then why claim that they would do? Why misrepresent a map to place them in a worse position? Guidance for TPO stipulates that protected trees should normally be visible from a road or footpath or be accessible by the public. The 4 trees in question here are located over 100 metres away from the nearest road and footpath on Mill Road. The officer's report says that they are clearly visible from Mill Road over the roof of the neighbouring residential property, this being over 5 metres high. I challenge his statement. The trees are located too far away to be of any significant amenity. I contend that this case for imposing a TPO on these trees, particularly the group G1 in the order, is extremely weak, tenuous and unjustified. There is no evidence of current neglect or threat to the trees. Certain tree works have already been undertaken on the site, and these trees were deliberately left in place. I'm also greatly concerned by the tree officer's comments in his internal consultation response to a planning application, DC 21/2429, for the property. This objects to the proposed application and makes reference to this TPO. The officer speculates on the likely value of houses should development proceed on this site and the possible reactions of behaviour.
Thank you. You've had your 2 minutes, more than 2 minutes. Thank you.
Anyone wants to look at a correct map, feel free.
Okay, Mr. Carey.
Good afternoon, Chairman. My name is Chris Carey. I'm a locally based chartered surveyor and advisor to Mr. and Mrs. Hudson. Mr. Hudson received formal notice of the TPO. I submitted an objection on his behalf. It is because of this objection the matter is before this committee today. The objection was submitted in February this year and runs to 3 pages. The report to committee refers to the grounds for objection in section 3.2. This is a brief summary of the objection, and I would have expected the report to contain far more detail. This objection is the reason for the report being before committee today, and the committee needs all and full appropriate information to make a reasoned decision. I'm of the opinion that there is insufficient information in the report regarding the grounds of this objection. We therefore have grave concerns regarding the veracity of the report. This is de facto our appeal. We can't really go beyond this. It goes to High Court, and all we've done to date is have to respond to this particular report. Could I please request that a decision on this matter is deferred, and could even go as far to recommend that maybe a site visit by the committee or a delegation be agreed. It can often explain the context and setting of the issues. And finally, I'd also like to state that we are receptive to a modification of the order to exclude Group G1, which we feel do not meet the required criteria for inclusion in the order. Mr. Hudson detailed this, and it serves no practical purpose for screening the site and then located a distance away. We think it's a very weak justification and highly tenuous, and would ask the committee consider these issues. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. So we now have Mr. Smallmouth. Please, thank you. You have 2 minutes, Mr. Smith.
Good afternoon, everyone. I would like to speak in favour of the continuance of the tree preservation orders. Our key concern is one of nature connectivity, as advised by the Sussex Wildlife Trust. The trees in the area are home to a variety of species, including bats, buzzards, and more recently kites, which nest in the area. We have regularly seen them using the row of 4 beautiful old oak trees that border our house and fence G1 on the order. In the evenings, bats can be seen commuting between the trees in South Mill, the trees in Oakmere, our home, and then the trees and barns at Doe Farm next door. These trees form an important commuting connection as well as a place for homing bats' nests. The 4 G1 trees and potentially others also fall within a 30-metre buffer zone around the numerous badger sets on our land at Oakmere. These sets have recently been surveyed and measured by Lizard Ecology and SC Surveying. The root protection area of the trees form an important part of the badger set structure, and the buffer zone takes this into consideration. These particular 4 mature oak trees, G1 on the order, also have significant historical significance as a previous boundaries, and can be seen clearly from public footpath and from the road, as you can see from one of the pictures there, and provide significant amenity benefits to the local area. These trees on G1 and others do have appeared on South Mill's previous planning application, and the fact that South Mill wishes to remove the TPOs could suggest that these trees are in real danger of being felled in any future application in the pursuit of financial gain, as were at least 8 mature trees before the previous application. A row of small hedging conifers is no adequate compensation for historic nature mature oaks. We were sad to have to remove a split tree 2 years ago on our own property because of lightning strike, but to remove mature trees for building purposes is not acceptable. And to this end, we will be putting TPOs on the remaining oaks on our property. We all have to do our part to play for the future of our planet, and preservation of each and every mature, healthy tree is critical to the fight against global warming and the protection of the countryside. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Lake, please. You have 2 minutes, Mr. Lake.
Chair, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Ian Legg. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to comment. My wife and I live in Millview, in Mill Road, in West Chiltington, and to the rear of our garden is the garden field belonging to South Mill. We moved into the area in October 2020 to be closer to our grandchildren and to enjoy our retirement in a quieter rural environment. We certainly haven't been disappointed by the beauty and tranquility of this part of the country. We acknowledge that the garden field we are talking about is not located in a formal conservation area. However, we had understood that it is part of what is considered to be a natural corridor between the area known as West Chiltington Common and the historic village around St Mary's Church. The views and the nature in this corridor is available to everyone, both residents and visitors walking on the local paths. Trees clearly play a key role in this environment. The bird life we have seen since moving here is remarkable, including herons, owls, buzzards, hawks, and wagtails. We have a neighbour who has seen evidence of bats. It is, of course, already disappointing that the council's arboricultural officer has found that several trees in the centre of the site have recently been felled before the recent planning application was submitted to the council for determination. My wife and I attended the recent Big Conversation meeting led by Councillor Chowan in Horsham, and we were encouraged to learn that the natural environment will be given a significant place in council decision making. There was expectation from those meetings that plenty will be done to try to preserve the character and beauty of this part of the country. In our view, it is important that the remaining trees on this site, which are listed in the documents, are all protected for the benefit of the local population and to maintain the important role they play in the local natural environment. We very much hope that the natural corridor between the two parts of West Chiltington will be maintained and not changed in character, and we support the continuation of the TPO. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Chris Fagan from West Chiltington Parish Council.
Thank you, Chairman.
You have 5 minutes, Mr. Fagan.
Thank you. I won't take up all of that time. Good afternoon. Thanks for the opportunity to speak this afternoon. The Parish Council fully supports the conversion of this temporary TPO into a permanent TPO, and our reasons are as follows. It is essential that whenever possible, we protect and preserve established and ancient trees in our parish. The trees are all substantial, mature oaks. They are an integral part of the rural scene, which is such a key characteristic of the village of West Chiltington and the surrounding countryside. The trees are visible from a number of the parish's footpaths. The trees help to screen existing housing, which would otherwise be visible from the surrounding countryside. The trees and the surrounding area are known to support a range of wildlife in the area, in particular buzzards, bats, badgers, and other indigenous species. The trees in question are on a site that has been proposed by a developer for new housing. Whilst that proposal has recently been withdrawn, the Parish Council is aware that the landowner removed a number of mature native trees prior to that application being submitted. And the Parish Council is therefore concerned that a similar disregard for the natural environment could occur if the trees being discussed today are not protected for the future. In summary, trees of this type play a vital role in safeguarding our climate, wildlife, and the environment, and should be protected for the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, do the officers want to come back to?
I will just make one or two brief points, I think, if that is okay. I mean, I think obviously we've heard a range of comments there. I did note the recommendation to defer. I think it is worth noting that, of course, for procedural sense, that the order confirmed at present is temporary, and indeed is due to expire in relatively short order. I think, in my view, therefore, we should be looking to make a decision on whether to confirm the order or not on the basis of the information before us. In addition, whilst I do note concerns regarding the screening effect provided by screen G1 in particular, though that screen group G1 is specifically discussed within paragraph 5.5 of the officer's report, in which reference is made to the relevant guidance document, which highlights that trees may be worthy of preservation for their intrinsic beauty or contribution to the landscape. And that would include, of course, the contribution they make to rural landscape character is, as generally the site is, well, it would be categorised as and characterised as. So therefore, in my view, and as considered by the arboricultural officer of the council, these trees are in good condition. They do have landscape and amenity value, and therefore the order is warranted. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Go to local members. Councillor Blackwell.
Thank you, Chairman. I thoroughly support the TPOs on this being made permanent. What we are foreseeing here is an attempt to clear this land for this proposed development, which has been withdrawn. But the suspicion is that that long term this will come back to us. I would also like to say that the points made by the other supporters of this were well made. Just to put it in a wider context, this corridor between the common hillside of West Chiltington and the old village is important. And you can go back about half a mile from where this site is, and you start with the area of where Southlands Farm, where there's a wedding venue and an events venue, which we approved. And there was considerable landscaping, which starts there. It moves to the other side. And on the other side of that, you have responsible landowners who have got the alpaca farm, the vineyards. Sarah Lavery and Claire Holloway have done a lot of work there. And then what they've done is also to clear their land and have allowed reeds and wildlife to be able to have a natural environment. And by fencing it, which they've done at Duke's Farm and the opposite side of the there, you've been able to then create an area where, you know, the destructive area of dog walkers going through with their animals, scaring off this, that, and everything else, has been protected. And the wildlife I've seen myself, because I live within about half a mile of this, have greatly increased in over the recent years. And you know, this development, if this comes about and these trees are removed, it will obstruct this corridor, which I think is a great benefit to West Chiltern and gives a character to the village, enhances the character of the village, which we will lose at our peril for, you know, a cheap one-off development like this. And so I would thoroughly support that we do this, and we you do all we can to make that, because as has been pointed out by the other speakers, I myself have observed, you know, last year, buzzards being down there, the reed beds, the proliferation. I mean, I went through there recently and there was a flock of buntings there, feeding off the seeds which come from this. And the other owners have been really landowners have been very supportive of this corridor. And another one just adjacent to this, there's one landowner quite altruistic on this, and he's put aside 2 fields which butt up to all of this, where he now keeps a couple of retired horse races. That's it. And you know, so the whole area has become quite a little wildlife haven, and this will go against these other landowners who have done so much to improve the situation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Seps.
Those who are members of professions know 2 types of question, broadly speaking, that one gets asked. The first is, here is an issue, what do you think? And you analyse it and you give your honest opinion. But there's a second type of question that you can get, which is, this is what we want to do, or this is what we're going to do. Can you create a case to support it? And that is exactly, and it's perfectly proper what Chris Carey has done, perfectly proper. He's done his best to come up with a case today to justify rejecting the making of this TPO permanent, which you would expect him to do. But the reality is, behind all this, as my colleague has said, there is an agenda. I won't say hidden agenda, because it's not hidden. Everyone in West Chiltern knows what the game plan is. And why we have this application in front of us this afternoon. Why we have it, because there is an intent when the opportunity arises, presuming it does at some stage, to put in an application for a development on this site. And what this is about is preparing the ground. We've all seen it. We've all seen it in our individual wards, to prepare the ground to make the site look as appropriate for development as possible. That's what this is about. The arguments that have been put forward against making the TPO permanent are utterly bogus. as I've said, we know what this is about. Everyone in West Chiltington knows what this is about. And I hope this afternoon we will accept the officer's recommendation that is well made and confirm the TPO. Thank you.
Councillor Eccles. Councillor Chapman.
Thank you, Chairman. I didn't know we were going to be stuck for a TPO discussion late in the meeting, but this is important. Unfortunately, I've got to slip away. But what I would say is that we could be losing 120 million ash trees in the next few years, which is going to have a devastating effect on our landscape and countryside. We need every oak. An oak of this maturity can hold up to 300 species in an oak tree. Whatever you plant will take 100 years to get to that stage, if we're lucky. If a development comes forward, because we're not here to look into the future, we have to decide what is in front of us. They will have to think very, very carefully about those trees when they're bringing forward that development plan. And I think we must do all we can to protect those trees. It's really, really important. And I'm just disappointed I won't be here to join in the vote, but I hope everyone else will support our we heard it, didn't we, this week from our professional tree officer, how passionate he is and how careful he is and professional. And I think we've always been well served by our tree officers in this district. I think of the previous one, what a godsend he was to us and to our district. So just want to support the officers on that. I'm just disappointed I won't be here to say the vote. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Any other member want to make a comment? No? Okay, in that case. We'll go to vote. So the recommendation is to confirm tree preservation order 1551. Can I have the hands raised, please, for those in favour of that? Thank you very much.
So 16 unanimous.
Okay, any against, please? Any abstentions? Okay. In that case, the recommendation has been confirmed. So we go to item 12, urgent business. I have no urgent items of business.
Just to remind members, the workshop this afternoon is now virtual, if you weren't already aware. Thank you.
Thank you. In that case, I declare the meeting closed at about 4 minutes. Thank you very much for everybody for coming. Stay well, have a safe journey home.
Although I did say I've got a meeting now, I said it before and I said I'll come around at 5.
Saying hello, Emma.
Hi,
Saying
Chris.
well.
Yeah, good, you okay?
Long time no see.
Yeah.
Still trying to retire, but
yeah.